has prepared what I call jaw-dropping numbers, or even if you like it, mouth-watering statistics. Yambo, if I were you, I would take it up.
Thank you so much, Brian, Kimani, and thank you also back at home for tuning in. This is the scorecard, and just as O'Brien has said, today it's all about the Finance Bill 2023. What are the contents? What are the positives and the negatives? Now, the National Treasury tabled the Finance Bill 2023 before the National Assembly on Thursday the 4th May 2023. The bill proposes a raft of tax changes geared towards expanding the tax base and raising revenue to meet the government's ambitious budget of 3.6 trillion shillings for the year 2023-2024. Now, some of the notable changes include value-added tax, as you can see on the smart board here, and the petroleum products will be subjected to 16% value-added tax. What are the implications of that? That means that the prices of transport and production of goods will definitely go up, and if that happens, that means Kenyans will continue grappling with the high cost of living. But there's something positive about this particular value-added tax on petroleum products, and that is that the liquefied petroleum gas that we use, mainly at home, will be exempt from the 16% VAT. The implications definitely is that it's going to be affordable, and I think if we can remember the president did say that a time will come where every home will be able to use gas, and apart from that, it also will positively impact on the issue of climate change, knowing that fossil fuels do emit carbon. So those are some of the positives that we are likely to see if this proposed finance bill goes ahead and is passed in Parliament. Now, National Housing Development Fund, this has also elicited a lot of reactions. Most Kenyans asking why should the government decide for them when to buy or whether to buy a home and where to buy a home. But the government says there's going to be a 3% contribution by both the employer and the employee. The contribution is to fund the purchase of a home for those who qualify, and to this is actually aimed at achieving the government's commitment to affordable housing under the Big Four agenda. And the next one is the pay as you earn. Now, currently it's at 30%, but the Finance Bill 2023 proposes a 35% increase for those earning more than 500,000 shillings. That means if you're earning 500,000 shillings, the likelihood is that you will pay a tax of 175,000 shillings, that is pay as you earn at 35%. But then the question is, will the government be able to meet its objective? Because most Kenyans are actually earning less than 100,000 shillings. So our guest in studio will be able to tell us whether taxing the so-called rich will actually help the government meet its target. Now, there are items which are going to be moved from being zero-rated to exempt. Again, our guest in studio will be able to tell us what does that mean? What does it mean to have items being at zero-rated and now to exempt? But simply put, farm inputs, including all raw materials for agricultural pest control, raw materials for manufacture of fertilizer, transport of sugarcane from farms to milling factories, are some of the items that will be moved from being zero-rated to exempt. What are the implications? Definitely increasing cost of production. Fertilizer, or the free fertilizer, the subsidized fertilizer project is one of the government's program to increase food production and all that. So how will that impact the excise duty on it? And what's the work of excise duty for that matter? Is it to collect revenue, or is it to deter the use of certain items that probably are seen as maybe harmful to the population? And other items that will be subjected to excise duty, as we've been hearing or we've been seeing on social media, is beauty products. Human hair, wigs, false beards, eyebrows and eyelashes, artificial nails, all that will be subjected to excise duty. A panel of experts will be able to tell us whether this is possible, how the government will manage to ensure that Kenyans or taxes are actually paid on these particular items. Now, I will not forget that there's a 15% withholding tax on income earned by digital content creators. We are living in a digital world. Most young people or even older people are now, doing business online. So what is going to be the implication of that? So you have until the 20th of May this year, definitely this month, to be able to give your views, you know, as the public participation exercise goes on. And so without further ado, I want to hand it over to O'Brien Kimani to continue with our guests in studio. But we have the question of the day: is the 2023-2024 budget mwana-inchi friendly? Go to our Facebook page, KBC Channel 1 TV, on our Twitter handle, that is at KBC Channel 1. Give us your views and we'll be able to sample them even as you continue with the program. So welcome once again. O'Brien Kimani, it's back to you.
Thank you very much indeed, excuse me, Marie Yambo, for indeed taking us through the journey of numbers. And we say, as we say here, numbers do indeed don't lie. Well, those are some of the measures outlined in the Finance Bill 2023. This is just a draft by the National Treasury. Let's first of all put it that way. And so the public is supposed to comment on these, make recommendations before the National Assembly now starts debating these. Remember, the budget reading or the budget policy reading is happening on the 8th of next month. And so we expected to hear more on, you know, what the government is planning about, you know, when it comes to bankrolling the budget, which is about 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings. And Kenya Revenue Authority, you know, has such an assignment, you know, to raise most of these resources at about 2.8 trillion Kenya shillings. And so it's a question of what kind of magic is it going to employ to ensure that it raises these huge resources at a time when, you know, the economy is not doing so well because of what we call exogenous as well as heterogeneous shocks. And so the question is, what is the way forward in financing our expenditure plan for the fiscal year 2023-2024? Well, I told you that I have my team in this studio. You have seen some of them, and one of them is new on this platform. But you know, but I can tell you for sure that when it comes to matters public finance, he is indeed a guru. Mohammed Salat is an expert in public finance management. He's joining us here on this show. He has worked for the national government at the Ministry of Planning and Vision 2030. He has also worked as a senior finance officer in the counties of Wajir and Machakos. And now he works with international public finances. Thank you very much, Indy Mohammed, for joining us here on the set.
Thank you.
I'm sure you feel comfortable.
Yes, I do.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
We are here for what we call intelligent conversations. Welcome to the show. Next to Mohammed is a regular face. This is Professor Fred Ogola. He's a public policy analyst as well as a governance expert. Asante sana, Prof, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, O'Brien.
And next to Prof, we have Whitney Misheni. She's also a political economist. Thank you, and asante sana for joining us, Whitney, as well.
Thank you, O'Brien.
And I want to start with you. So when you managed to see the contents of the Finance Bill 2023, what was your reaction?
Thank you, O'Brien, and also a good evening to your viewers. When I was looking at the Finance Bill 2023-2024, my overview was that some proposals are good for the public. Mm-hmm. Some proposals are counterproductive to the economy, meaning to businesses and also at a personal level. And thirdly, actually some proposals are punitive to the economy in general. So I do believe as we delve into it, we're going to look at the different proposals and we'll be able to see which ones are punitive, which ones are actually good for the government, and which are counterproductive. But yeah, those are just my overview. That's the overview. But also, as you've said, the budget is 3.6 trillion. Kerry has a very over-ambitious, in my view, target of raising 2.89, which is basically 2.9 trillion, meaning someone has to finance that budget. But in my view, I do think that's a bit overambitious for KRA, seeing as this year I'm not sure if they will actually meet the target of 2 trillion, but let's finish the financial year and then we'll see. But I do believe that some of the proposals which have been set out in the Finance Bill 2023-2024, some are counterproductive. The government might think that they're going to raise revenue, but I do believe that they might actually receive a shortfall.
And I like the fact that you're bringing in the issue of tax goal setting, which is done by the National Treasury, and for the people at Times Towers to implement. And so there has always been that debate whether these put unnecessary pressure on Kenya Revenue Authority to perform. So, Prof, how did you react when you saw the finance bill?
I think the finance bill, as Whitney says, has some good elements, but there are some other things that you ask, what problem is it trying to solve? Because any finance bill, first of all, it is falsely called finance bill, actually should be called a tax bill, because it's just about tax, because guys can ask, so where is the money going? So finance means how should it go on? But I understand where they're coming from is that because Parliament has to pass this bill to allow KRA to be able to collect taxes that way. That's why it's called finance bill, but actually it should be a tax bill. Because I don't see anything here that finance, I only heard about taxing.
So how did you react?
My main reaction there is this, that they are trying to solve what is not the problem. The problem we are facing, in fact, maybe Salat can confirm to you, we are actually facing an expense issue, not a revenue issue. So they are trying to increase how to collect more revenue, but that's not the issue. Because KRA has always grown their revenue collection. Why are we going to do this? What we need to do is government needs to focus more on how it manages the expenditure rather than focusing on collecting more, because sometimes when you want to collect more, you collect less. Because I look at the implications on how can this create income for people. For example, just pick the issue of the hair thing. You see, this business is called Best Ladies. It has got cosmetics, hair, all those things. So it employs people. Beauty products. It employs people. There are some people who get goods from there and resell them. By overtaxing them, it means some people will not make money. And this is what this bill is talking about. It might actually drive people below the budget line. People might start consuming either cheaper products or even illicit products. And that will now make KRA to collect less. So by trying to expand it, actually you are shrinking it.
Very good. What about Mohammed?
Well, as for me, the finance bill had mainly focused on trying to get more taxes, expand the tax base, get more people, regardless of whether the taxation measures that we are introducing will be counterproductive in terms of the revenue that we raise. And then there's also like tax the employee, tax the employer. Get more businesses into the tax bracket and all that. Then at some point we ask, at what point, and as my colleague here has said, at what point do we start addressing the main issue, the expenditure issue that we are having? It doesn't matter even if we increase the level of taxes that we are collecting. For as long as we don't address the expenditure leakages that we've been seeing, then we can as much collect as 4 trillion, but it will not have any impact on the economy, because there are basic fundamental issues with how we spend the money that we collect. And I believe that is what Treasury needs to focus on more. Before we look at expanding the tax base.
And I have always, had these figures, about, public wastage or wastage of public resources in the public sector. And some people have put this at about 40% of all, revenue collected by tax collecting agency, is wasted, or I mean, it cannot be accounted for, and so you're bringing in the issue of prudent management of public resources. But before you talk about prudent management of resources, first of all, you must have the resources so that you can manage it. But I also want to hear from you. Can you tell us what is good about this finance bill?
Well, there is the bottom-up economic agenda, and the food security healthcare, digital superhighway. So if you look at some of the sectors that they are targeting in terms of they here means the government, KRA as well as National Treasury, you find that for most of the core issues that they were to address under the 5 pillars of the bottom-up economic model have in some way seen a reduction in the level of taxes that they are going to charge the people. But then beyond that, I don't see anything.
What are these areas?
You have like we have duty on mobile, like the mobile telecommunication. We are having the exemptions that the presenter had just presented on the agriculture sector. We are trying to see like there's also increased contribution towards NHIF to achieve universal health security, universal healthcare, sorry, and all that. So you look at the core issues that they were to focus on under the budget policy statement, then in one way or another you find that there is some sort of like relaxation in terms of the taxes that are going to be charged. But beyond that, and like the employers and the employees, as I had first said, is charge people, like tax people, get more taxes from them. Get the NSSF, get the employer to increase housing. The employer also matches that. So beyond, and the LPG, the reduction of tax on LPG, beyond that, then it's very hard to see the impact on the common mwananchi will be detrimental in terms of the number of taxes that are increasing in the finance bill.
Actually, it's an exemption from of 8% on LPG, and of course a 3.5% import declaration fee, which is expected to have a significant impact on the cost of LPG in this country. And so one can clearly see a concerted effort by the government to try and increase the uptake of LPG usage in this country. Yes, Prof, what is a good thing about this document, even as you maybe make an input on what Salat has said?
A good thing, because I come from Siaya, there are some counties that will celebrate also. You see, there's that taxation on transportation of sugar, sugarcane. And currently, you know that Cabras Sugar gets sugarcane from Siaya, and they pay nothing. So because I come from Siaya, I hope my governor, James Orengo, will collect some levies from this one, and maybe Siaya will contribute some significant to the national revenue. So maybe I'm happy that at least we shall charge Kakamega County when they pick sugar from there. And of course, the other thing is, which is good about this finance bill, is the timing of it. Remember, may not the outcome of the timing of it. We're just about to go through the budget process, and they may be predicting that there are some commodity prices that will go down, and therefore they won't have a lot of impact on people. We are predicting. But I can tell you, if you ask this question, that does the good or the bad outweigh the good, I could tell you that the bad tends to outweigh the good for one reason.
We're coming to the bad.
No, but see, just on the one point, on the issue on the fuel levy. Fuel, by doing 16% from 8%, will drive the fuel prices by between 10 to 12 shillings. And you see, I was talking to Matatu people today, and they told me Matatu people just take advantage to double the prices. So, for example, from Rongai to Nairobi, we'll move from 150 to 300 peak time. And from Githurai 50, is it Githurai 54 or 45? Yeah, 45, yes.
Clearly.
Yes.
You don't go to Githurai.
Yeah, I don't, of course, but yeah, that route always do something between 120, 150. It will also go up, meaning that those who go buy vegetables here and there to do business will become hard. All those people doing Mamamboga and the rest will be affected.
But it's also good to point out that, the Matatu, transport, or what do you call this? I mean, fares, Matatu or public transport fares, have never been controlled, and so it always has been a case of haphazard. Today it's raining, they charge you this much. Tomorrow it's sunny.
Even if there's wind, they use anything. In fact, I'm trying to tell you that by just them hearing there's going to be 10 shillings, they won't add 10 shillings the fare. They'll add more.
They will add more.
Yeah, so I'm trying to say those are now, how will government come in now to actually contain predators who are going to emerge from this tax bill? Because there are predators about it. Even, for example, some employees will start saying, now because we are being taxed, we'll tell the employer, increase our salaries. There'll be everyone talking about increment. So we are looking at how will this be contained, and how will people be satisfied in this context. So I'm trying to say, for me, the fact that fuel will go up, when you go to buy bread, it will be there. When you go to buy rice, you'll feel it. Anything that is being transported or being used, everything uses fuel, even if you are building a house. So even landlords may increase rents because of that, because everything is going up. So I'm trying to say that is one thing the government could have looked at, the fact that there's bipartisan negotiation in Parliament trying to ask for lowering cost of living. You cannot again bring in another bill that increases the cost of living, because actually it will.
Very good. What would you point out as the good about this bill?
The good about this bill, first of all, we've seen that KRA, for the tax refunds, they will be refunding. It used to be 2 years, then they've now brought it to 6 months, meaning you'll be getting your VAT returns in 6 months. So that's a plus. Secondly, we also have the inflation adjustment, which was being reviewed annually. They've scrapped that, meaning it brings in an environment of tax predictability and stability. So that's the second one. And also the third one, we've seen that the KRA has waived, there's an amnesty if you on the penalties and the interests of the taxes that someone had prior to December 2022, meaning they have been waived. So that's also a good thing. However, and also the fourth one, we've seen that the rental tax has been decreased from 10% to 7% to 7.5%, meaning they want to bring in landlords to comply with the taxes, because as we know, many landlords do not comply, meaning that's a significant reduction from 10% to 7.5%. However, as you have pointed it out, and also my colleague has pointed it out, that LPG, you think that is a good measure from the government. I beg to disagree, because once you increase the taxes on fuel, as we know from 2018, the petroleum products were exempt, and then now in 2018 it was put at 8%. Right now they want to increase it to 16%. Once you increase, as Prof has said, once you increase the cost of fuel, the VAT, everything is going to go up, meaning even this LPG, which has been exempted right now, is going to be counterproductive, because they're still going to incur costs as they transport that LPG, meaning I do believe that it is a counterproductive measure. And also I don't believe that it will make it affordable, because people will still go back to using coal, and it will just also
firewood and charcoal.
Exactly, and also it will just be another effort to make climate change the crisis.
So in your opinion, it's an exercise in futility.
Yes.
But also it's good to point out that a VAT on petroleum products, I mean, it used to be 16% before it was lowered at the height of COVID-19 to try and shield more Kenyans, from the impact of COVID-19. And so the Treasury has been adamant that it is high time that we take it to where it has always been, bearing in mind that petroleum products, they attract, the consumption of petroleum products, is always very high in Kenya. And so it's always a soft target for raising taxes. Salat, you want to say something before we take a quick break?
Yes. When it comes to the cost of living, you look at Treasury and the governments in general had mainly been focusing on the cost of fuel. And it was assumed that if you reduce the cost of fuel, then it goes in a long way reducing the cost of living within the country. Recently, we had the agreement with the government of Saudi Arabia and the UAE in terms of, getting fuel in credit as a way of easing the dollar pressure within the economy, and also, trying to address the cost of fuel. So in one way, you're trying to reduce the cost of energy or the cost of fuel within the country. And then less than 3 months after you signed the deal, you're increasing the VAT on that by 8%. So it's sort of, it's more of a government that is having measures that tend to be counterproductive.
In one, it's a case of taking from one hand,
yes,
and giving with the other hand.
Yes, you introduce a measure to reduce the cost of a commodity. Then within 3 months down the line, you introduce a tax to increase the cost of the commodity. So what changed within the last 3 months to, you know, like inform the increase?
We need to take a short break, Salat. But I can see you have a burning point.
Oh, yeah, I just want to address his point real quick. And also, we know oil prices are influenced globally. We've seen the Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries that they're reducing their supply, meaning the cost of fuel will also increase in the global scale. Meaning once you increase taxes locally and also prices are going to increase globally, I think that is that's overburdening Kenyans with the taxes, because the global market will also be will also receive the shocks from the supply in the petroleum products.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, you're watching The Scorecard live from Broadcasting House. This is all about intellectual conversations. Well, we are taking a short break, and thereafter we are coming back with more content. And of course, remember, our question today is the Finance Bill 2023 Mwananchi friendly? Well, get talking to us. We are back with more.
Instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
Slowly, your spouse is less important. I feel so lonely. I want to cry.
What a big surprise.
My God!
Jenny! Isn't this all one and only Jenny?
If you have time to come, you're all welcome.
Oh, you got the job completely on your own this time.
So right now, let's celebrate your happy marriage in the future and
Charlene's bright future at home, and cheers! Cheers!
我和你爱得起，还不用去在意分歧，感情若有真谛，让彼此都做自己。
Welcome back. You're watching The Scorecard live from Broadcasting House. And of course, tonight we are focusing on the hula baloo that has been caused by the Finance Bill 2023 because of various factors. And now we are analyzing and looking into those issues. So remember, our question of the day is, do you think the Finance Bill 2023 or is the 2023-2024 budget Mwananchi friendly? Remember, the statement is going to be presented before the House on the 8th of June. That is the question. Get talking to us through our social medias. O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle, at KBC Channel 1 and at KBC is also our Facebook page. Time now to listen to what Kenyans are saying. Let's now go to the streets and get to hear their reactions.
I'm going to increase 6% NHIF for the employer, for the employee. And yet in the public sector today, all public servants are covered in one pension scheme or the other. We have lab trust, we have lab fund, we have public servant superannuation scheme where the civil servants belong. Why do you want to bring again 6% on top of this? NHIF is an act that established a pension scheme. Lab fund is established by an act of parliament. Public servant superannuation scheme is established by an act of parliament. We should have been conducted, and those NHIF should only apply to people who do not have a pension scheme. There is no pension scheme in the world that administrative costs should go above 2%. And NSSF is a DC scheme. It means workers must be represented 50%, employers 50%.
Taxes payee is going to be increased from 30 to 35%. We are going to have 3% deduction on housing. There is an increase in the fuel levy from a paltry 4% to 16%. What that tells you, it is going to be impossible for us to even imagine that the cost of living will come down. And that is why our position as the council, we are now calling upon the National Assembly to stand up and be guided by the principle of consciousness so that they don't push this agenda on partisan basis.
Once we resume our duties on 5th of June, we will see, because it is normal for any government to propose on where they are able to raise funds to be able to meet the budget ceilings that they've been able to set, because it is a fact that Kenyans need roads, Kenyans need medical services, Kenyans need bursaries, Kenyans need all those things. But where is the money? How do we get the money? So the question about the finance bill is where we'll be able to draw that money from. So there are proposals that the executive has set. Some we agree, some we don't. And that is why Parliament exists, and it's an independent body. Once we see the finance bill proposed by our colleagues from the Finance Committee, matters to do with, matters to do with higher taxation on basic salary, especially when one earns beyond 500,000. Those are the things that we'll be able to discuss. We'll agree. Matters to do with the housing levy, which is voluntary. Those are the things that we are going to agree, of course, before we resume duty. But we all must agree that we must find a way to be able to meet this high budget that we've set.
Well, those are some of the political leaders, giving their views in regard to the Finance Bill 2023. We just now want to go to your responses. Mary Yambo has some reactions from the public. Mary Yambo, what are the people saying?
Thank you so much, O'Brien. Well, it's eliciting a lot of talk online. And just a reminder of the question again, is the 2023-2024 proposed budget mwananchi friendly? And some of you have actually communicated, well, Gabriel Mburu on Facebook is saying, from the comments, nobody is comfortable. The government should just continue borrowing from where the last regime left. George Wanyonyi, this is frustrating. They're frustrating Kenyans by overtaxation. The increase of fuel is going to affect everything, and life will be totally hard. It's mixed reactions, really. Victor says this government should keep up this kind of good work. And Abraham Kirwa says serikali isikie kilio ya mnyonge asibebeshwe mzigo. So it's mixed reactions. Some think it's good, but a majority of them think like the proposed budget will actually be a burden to them. So we'll be sampling your comments as we continue with the program. So just remember that our question of the day is the 2023-24 proposed budget mwananchi friendly? Would like to hear from you. Back to you, Brian.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, we'll come back to you for more reactions. And I now want to hear from you, gentlemen. I mean, when you look at these, if Parliament decides to pass this bill as it is, which is this one piece of legislation that you feel is going to have a major impact on the cost of living in this country. Fred?
According to me, O'Brien, it's very clear that I think there's a survey which was an economic survey. They say that unemployment has increased. Secondly, economy has slowed down. And thirdly, inflation has gone up. When you pass this finance bill, you'll only make this worse. So is that better? And that's why I was trying to tell you, we can look for where to cut excesses. We can look for where there's revenue leakages. And also we can look for where there are wastages. And they are very clear. And sorry to say this, because this is a fact that just this week, the same day the president was in London, the same day the deputy president was in Botswana, the same day the prime secretary was in Bujumbura, and they went to delegation. They didn't go on free air. It was taxpayers' money spent. Do we need these trips? And what are they coming with? In London, you know very well that the US president didn't attend it, and they have never attended in history. But us Africans were cursed because George Weah was the first to arrive. Even the neighbors of UK had not come. What is the hurry? So we are running. Do these people also run to come to a swearing in here? Is there any coronation of any king you've seen being attended to that magnitude? What I'm trying to say is that before, in fact, O'Brien, whenever you take a flight, there is always an announcement made on the plane that when the oxygen level drop, put on your oxygen mask first before you help your neighbor, even if there's an infant. You know, they insist, even if there's what? An infant. But for us here, we have lost oxygen, but we are trying to give UK oxygen, we are trying to give Holland oxygen. We will die. So for me, it is squeezing Kenyans to a point where our head is under the water and we can't breathe. So for me,
but you are also aware that you know, the government has instituted various austerity measures, you know, like you know, public expenditure or you know, expenditure or expenses by senior government or by public servants as well as civil servants, you know, has really been cut, and the government is really working hard to try and seal those revenue leakages that you are talking about. You don't think this is good measure enough?
No, because what I'm trying to say, why I'm trying to say that they need to cut them, when you cut what gives the normal Kenyan revenue, but what is spent in London does not bring revenue here, you can increase that as a problem. For example, cutting tea in an office. If they cut tea today in KBC, the mama mboga who brings tea here is in trouble, right? But if we make the mama mboga be able to bring tea here and continue earning revenue, they are educating a child. So I want to cut what matters. What doesn't matter, we shouldn't. Maybe let me give the government a benefit of some doubt here, because you told me in the beginning, first of all, let us get these money resources is when we cut. Maybe the next phase will be, now we know our revenue. Can we now look at leakages and cut it? How can we reduce revenue? Because for me, that is the main conversation. But I've told you, whenever you're solving a problem, start by asking, what is the problem? Is the problem revenue or the problem expenditure?
Very good.
According to me, the problem is still expenditure. And I'm very happy the president was a deputy president before. And there's something he knows that even us sitting on television doesn't know.
So,
and we are hoping that this is the only thing we can gain when we make the decision. So
in your own opinion, expenditure is our biggest challenge?
Yes.
Very good. Salat, I also want to hear from you that you see, when you look at our tax ratio to GDP, it came down from about 16.3%, and now we're talking about 15.4%, which is significantly lower. And you know, I know the National Treasury has been very keen to try and increase this to about 25%. Do you see the Treasury, you know, trying to influence this through increasing taxation new taxes?
Well, if you listen to the various economists, there's always an optimum level beyond which, if you tax people or if you tax citizens and industries, then you'll be having negative returns. Rather than having taxes increasing, your taxes will be going down. And if you look at currently KRA, as per the 9-month exchequer report that was released, a target for tax revenue was 2.1 trillion. But then within as of 31st March, that's 9 months into the financial year, we are doing around 1.3 trillion. And while we are having a lot of issues trying to get 2.1 trillion, we are increasing that to 2.8 trillion. And how are we doing that? We are doing that by taking more taxes from the same pool of people that you've been taxing. And the challenge that this has is that you're reducing the disposable income that is available to the citizens. Economies are built on demand. The citizens should demand goods for the industries to produce, and through that they create jobs, there's the profit and all that, and collectively that is what grows our economy. But then if we keep on taxing these people, we're increasing the level of taxes they're paying. You introduce a 6% housing tax, NSSF at 6% and all that, then you are reducing the disposable income that is available to the citizens for them to afford the basic goods and services. You look at approximately half of what people earn, 50% goes towards food expenditure every month. So what are you telling the Kenyans? That we take more money from you? So what do? Do you eat less food? Do you skip meals? Do you take one meal a day? And beyond that, you look at also the taxes that I've just mentioned. It's not only the citizens that are paying the taxes, but you also you see that it's the employer. So effectively, what does this do? It increases the cost of hiring labor. So what are you telling the employers? Do they need to reduce the number of workforce they have? Will they be forced to reduce the level of compensation that they provide to the employees? And when that happens, effectively, if you reduce the level of like compensation you're giving to your employees, or if you hire fewer people, it's like you're contributing more towards the unemployment, and in real terms, it will have a negative impact on
I want to hear this from Whitney. I mean, look, we just came from a very depressive economic times because of COVID-19 pandemic, and then even before we could recover fully, we went into a quite elongated political period. And even before we could recover from that, I mean, we went through one of the worst droughts in this country in more than 4 decades. These new taxation measures by the government, do you think they have come at the right time?
Thank you, O'Brien. Also, as you've also, just to add on to your point, we've seen many external shocks, as you've also said, and also we've seen the Ukraine-Russia war, which also we import a lot of food items from Russia and Ukraine. So, of course, also that contributes to the current financial situation we're in right now. But now, as you've said, the art of timing. Is this the right time to bring in these taxes? In my view, this is not the right time, because as we've said, there are very many shocks that the economy has gone through, and we are yet to recover from COVID. I do believe that some of, and we know that SMEs are actually the backbone of this country. They contribute significantly to the GDP, and also they employ
about 25%.
Yes, and they employ about 83% of the labor force. So, for example, when you introduce the turnover tax, and you say that which is basically targeting the micro and small enterprises, you say that you will reduce the threshold from 1 million to 500,000. Now it's going to be from 500,000 to 15 million, and then the rest will pay corporate tax. And previously it was from 1 million to 50 million. Of course, when you bring it down to 500,000, that's somebody who's 500,000 turnover annually. That's somebody who's making 40,000 a month. I don't believe that's being prudent in how you want to collect the taxes, because as we've said, there's the Laffer curve, where you see even if you increase the taxes, the compliance might be it might be negligible. You might not get the returns that you intend to get. So this turnover tax, and also not only lowering the threshold, but also increasing it from 1% to 3%. So I do believe those are punitive measures. I think we should first focus either we reduce the threshold, or we reduce or we increase the percentages, but not two at the same time, but just one. That's what I mean. So, and also, secondly, I do believe that one of the biggest challenges facing Kenya is income inequality and the dependency ratio. So once you start raiding people's pay slips with NSSF, with NHIF, with the housing levy, of course you have the payee, now the per diems will start being taxed. I do believe that the people in the lower cadres of society, they earn very little, and taxing them to the bone is not the way to go in this economy. So I do believe and also we're seeing those people in the lower income, they do support many people in their families. They have probably children, they have nieces, they have nephews, they have cousins, they have mothers. So I do believe the government is really not being hustler friendly, as they said in the campaign trail. I do believe there are very many moving parts in this finance bill. I think they should just focus on probably a few that will get good returns, but putting everything in the whole spectrum, it's not the way to go. And now, lastly, I also believe that it is a disincentive to businesses. Once you say that you're going now, the tax, once KRA does an assessment on my taxes and I have a dispute, that I have to deposit 20% of the disputed amount so that I can have, a hearing in the court. I do believe that that is very that's actually an affront on the rights, the access to justice. I do believe that KRA should go about this in a very sober way. I do believe that's punishing businesses, because once you ask me for the 20%, probably I don't even have it. Once I start borrowing, probably I don't even have somewhere to borrow. And if I don't have the 20%, I won't even be able to go through the litigation process. Meaning I might close shop because I'm not able to raise the 20% and I'm not able to pay the taxes. So I do believe that this is a very punitive measure. This is unfair. This is an affront to the access of justice, and I think KRA should rethink that.
You see, when you look at statistics, Prof, even as you respond to what Whitney has said, I mean, less than 0.5% of Kenyans, take home about 500,000 shillings, and above. And so, a lot of people are yet to understand, what is the National Treasury trying to achieve, by going for these 0.05%. And I saw somewhere somebody saying that instead of my 500,000 plus salary, being taxed at a rate of 35%, why don't I talk to my employer to reduce my 500,000 shillings a month to maybe 450 or 420 or 405,000 shillings? Are we likely to end up in such kind of situation?
Of course, there'll be, there's tax consultants. Even when you want to raise salaries of employees, there's a tax consultant who comes and tells you the tax implications of doing that. Even how you want to withdraw your dividends as a shareholder, all that will come to play. In fact, people are going to make some money here. There will be some money for tax consultants who will try to advise you how to comply. Like now, someone can say, just remove 1 shilling from 500,000, because actually no one is paid exactly 500,000. Just removing 1 shilling, they fall below 35 and they enjoy their benefits without having challenges. In fact, it's cheaper to be paid 2 shillings less than to be paid 500,000. So that can be paid. So I'm saying, when you come with tax policy that people can circumvent, then it's not helpful. So the other point I wanted to make was, one, I think we need to also advise the government rather than bashing them. This government needs a stimulus package. A stimulus package is when the government invests in a certain way to spur private sector to become vibrant and want to do business. This will actually make them collect more taxes than austerity and overtaxing. The other thing, a point I have is that I go with my brother who talks about the issue of you have not met your target and you're still increasing your target. It's like you went to another school, you go to D, then you go into class 1, you go to an E, then you're going to secondary school. Chances are that you're going to be a disservice in the end. So I told you, if the government can tell KRA, like I like. Treasury sets the target. Tell KRA, tell us how you're going to meet these targets, isn't it? That could work much better. The third point I have is that we have to remember, as we continue to talk about taxation, is that Kenya is not living in a vacuum. There's what you call competitiveness of a nation. How competitive is Kenya in attracting foreign direct investment? How competitive is Kenya in attracting people who want to come do business in Kenya? So someone sits in New York and is looking and saying, Gazette notice in Kenya is very busy. In fact, every day they are printing 10 pages or 50 pages. And every time it's about tax. Then you should not go to Kenya. If you look at the Gazette notice in Uganda and Tanzania, it's less busy. And means that now, as I can tell you, more foreign direct investment going to Tanzania and Uganda. That's why they're having less depreciation of their shilling compared to ours, and that's the reason. Then lastly, and this is very important, my brother, you work in Treasury. Tax collection is about relationship. That's what we are forgetting here. It's about how KRA relates to the people who pay taxes. In fact, KRA, I like when Michael Waweru was in charge of KRA. He said something that, actually with Kibaki, they came time saying that our work is still to comply. Taxes is a law. It's a law, you have to comply. Like now, when this is passed, it's a law. KRA cannot be blamed for collecting the taxes. If you feel aggrieved, go and change the law.
That is their business.
But KRA will help you comply. It is a painful compliance, but nevertheless you must.
But you have no option.
So tax is relational. Let us follow this spirit of relational intelligence, how we shall engage the taxpayers, and actually we can collect more.
I also want to hear from Salat. I mean, you see, the government is not a business. So, you know, they don't run any business that whereby they expect, you know, profit at the end of the month. The government is supported by the taxes that we pay as citizenry, you know, the levies, the cess, and everything else, you know. But we expect government to build hospitals. We expect government to build roads, to employ more teachers, to employ more police officers, equip them, to employ, you know, civil servants, and so much. And so we expect services from the government. But yet we complain when the government wants to raise resources to ensure that services are delivered. So what should the government do actually?
I tend to feel that the government is in a sort of a catch-22 situation where if you look at the present economic conditions, the reduced growth, the increasing inflation, the unemployment levels, it requires the government to implement expansionary fiscal measures, which means you reduce the taxes, you know, you give more incentives towards production and all that. But then at the same time, if you look at the expenditure side, the government is spending more than a third of whatever we are planning in the budget to pay for public debt. It's like our wasteful behaviors over the last 10 years are catching up with us. We no longer have the fiscal space to be able to, you know, like deploy the appropriate fiscal and monetary policy measures that we have as a country. So in one way, the government is like, it should ease the cost of doing business within the country. In the other hand, they really need these taxes because we are supposed to pay the debt that we owe the people. We've seen that currently government is having pressures to meet obligations, you know, pay debt, pay staff, pay contractors. If you look at the number of contractors that are owed in pending bills by the government at both the national and county level, it's like they're increasing every day. So the only way out for the government is to ensure that now, as we had said, as we address the expenditure issues, then we the citizens have also contributed to where we are today. In terms of the type of the leadership that we had and the people that we've elected to oversight government. So in the short run, we have to make trade-offs. You know, like for the government, what does the government need to focus on? And it's either we pay higher taxes or we expect less services as we try to, it's like the proverbial hole that we are in. And the government we are trying to come out of the proverbial hole.
But I also want to, I mean, Salat, I want to pick it up from you. Yes. Are you trying to say that higher taxes equals to good service delivery?
No. Well, that is not what it means. But the common adage is, to whom much is given, much is expected. Yes. So, for example, for the individuals that are getting more than 500,000 shillings, these are high net worth individuals in terms of the experience and the level of services that they offer the different institutions they are employed in. So once you tax 35% of the income that I have, then what is the government giving me in return? If I'm supposed to pay like 52% of, like the computation from the different media houses was showing that up to 52% of your income was going towards taxation, then what are you getting in return? But
so there must be value for investment.
It's value
because the taxes that I pay is an investment that I'm making to the government.
Yes.
And so I should get value for that.
Yeah, for countries that have very high taxation levels, especially the Scandinavian countries, you see that education is free, healthcare is free. Still,
public transport is efficient.
Yes, our public services are wanting. If you go to hospitals today, you won't even find the basic medication. Schools, we could not even roll out CBC because we didn't have enough classrooms.
I mean, let me hear things because I can see we are almost coming to the tail end of this conversation, and we must do the scorecarding that we are famous for. I mean, it's like everybody is complaining, but we expect the country to go on. We expect the government to be in place. We expect the economy to grow. We expect jobs to be created. I mean, if you are government, Whitney, what would you do, honestly speaking? Would you close business and go?
That's a very
yeah, and resign and say no, I can't handle this anymore.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. But now it brings in, as my colleague was saying, it brings in the question of accountability in government. I do believe that Parliament has been the biggest letdown in our democracy. It's been the weakest link in our democracy because they do not oversight the executive in what that they do. In what they do. Because as we've seen that, as he said that a lot of our the first charge of our consolidated fund is where actually we're getting these taxes probably is because of the large public debt that we have. And we know in 2023-2024 finance bill, I do believe that 1.2 trillion is actually going to debt, be it domestic debt and also external debt. So I do believe that, of course, all this debt that we have to pay for right now was passed through Parliament. So it does bring in the question of accountability to the parliamentarians, because we've also seen we're facing a cash crunch issue. We've seen that civil servants have not been paid. Counties, they've not been remitted for the disbursements in about three months. The pensioners, I do believe that only 30% of pensioners who are eligible to be paid out only 30% have been paid out, meaning the government, that's why they've introduced these very radical measures, including where they're saying that, of course, we know that the betting industry remits their taxes in 24 hours, but we've also seen that in other excise duty, some other sectors, KRA wants the money in 24. They want you to remit your taxes in 24 hours. I do believe that's a very big compliance burden on the businesses, but it's also just because Parliament has let us down. Now KRA wants, money ASAP. So I do believe that a lot of our elected politicians have been a very big letdown, and right now I do believe that as even we're going through this public participation, I think it's very imperative on us to pressure our members of Parliament to, do whatever they have to do so that we can have some balancing act in this finance bill 2022.
Very well. In 1 minute, Prof, before now we get into the conversation of scorecarding. So what should we do? Or what should the government do?
The government would have invested to create these jobs and incomes to tax. In UK, the players of football, the football industry, watch Arsenal, watch Manchester United. Do you know how much sport industry contributes to that economy? And do you know what the government has invested to collect those taxes? And you see players who earn £700,000 a week, they pay taxes £350,000 a week. So investment. The second thing I wanted to discuss about the issue of the government is facing a challenge. Let us also be empathetic here. Do you know what we are suffering? Why everybody is unhappy? The expectations was very high about Kenya Kwanza government because they were very tired about Uhuru government. They thought this government will make it lighter for them. It's just like that the yoke will be lighter and now they are finding that the yoke is heavier. And O'Brien, we have discussed it at some point, they're saying that the yoke of economy will always be heavier. So the expectation we had was that we will sit back and William Ruto will be hustling for us and we shall earn. And his opposite is telling us, please get back to work, earn money, pay taxes, we run the economy. Then the issue of debt to GDP in Kenya is 75%. The optimum is 77%, so we are not yet very badly off. In fact, US is doing 127%.
But of course, it's a larger economy.
Yes, but
and they have the ability to print more dollars.
So the point I'm trying to draw here, having this debt to GDP is not the issue. Actually, you can actually borrow more and have a higher debt to GDP if you're putting your money that will generate more
like
income. Like Japan. But remember that Japan has got it wrong. Also, there is another country that has got it wrong in South America, where they were taking much debt, thinking they are building petroleum industry, and it collapsed. They have the worst debt to GDP that is almost 500-something%. In fact, almost the country cannot be salvaged. So austerity measures is not a good thing, but prudence is the word. And for me, I would ask the president, in this finance bill, which I would call is still a tax bill to me, in this finance bill, where are we putting money that will spur economic growth, income growth, employment growth,
very well,
that will add this tax bracket rather than just taxing the same people, expecting to collect more? It won't work.
So the question is, are we putting our money where our mouth is? And are we directing our resources to high impactful or...
And let me also tell the Kenyans that honeymoon is over, because Kenyans are still talking about the campaign mood. Let's tell Kenyans that the honeymoon, when he was telling them, I'm a hustler president, now I'm president.
Very good.
I have to run the economy. Let everybody come to work. Let also Kenyans ask themselves, what are they bringing rather than what are they getting from Kenya?
Very well. Time now to scorecard the finance bill. And I want to start with Whitney. In terms of Mwananchi friendliness, how do you rate the finance bill?
0.
0?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yes, I am.
Why?
As we've said, there's nothing to spur the economy. The economy is in doldrums. We need something like a stimulus package. This right now, the only thing we're seeing is government taking from us. What is the government giving us to be an incentive to businesses and to people? So I would give them a 0. The tax bill is totally unfriendly to people.
In terms of innovativeness, when it comes to raising resources, how do you rate it?
I would give them a 2. I do believe they're trying to net more people into the tax bracket. We've seen digital content creators. We're also seeing the landlords who are not normally compliant. We're also seeing the crypto world is being brought in, meaning they're bringing in the digital economy, which has not been taxed really in Kenya. So I would give them a 2 for creation and innovation. Yes.
And in terms of trying to net more taxpayers into the tax bracket, how do you rate them?
I would give them a 2. As I've said, they're bringing in the digital economy, which is a very key component of Kenya's economy. They've brought them into this finance bill. We have some curls in it, but also I do believe in that sector they've been quite innovative. So I would give them a 2.
So it's a 0, 2, 2.
Yes.
Very good. Let's go to
Can
Prof.
you go to Salat first?
We go to Salat first?
Yes.
Why? I saw you writing something. Is it that you didn't get the question?
Because I want let's say our new guy to, before I brainwash him.
Yes. Very good. Salat, let's start with the first question. In terms of friendliness to...
Before I go to rating, I would also want to contribute to the previous discussion, if I take people back, just for a second.
In 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, yes. And I think, as you had said, we need to go back to the basics as an economy, and we look at what do we need to invest in. I don't think it's the business of government to give us houses while we cannot afford food. So let's go back to the basis. Let's go to agricultural production and productivity, and get away with the notion that if we give fertilizer, it's going to lead to productivity. Have we looked at what the main problem with our agriculture sector is beyond the fertilizer that we give farmers every planting season? So let's go back to the basics and look at high impact sectors of the economy to invest in. And housing is it looks elitist in my own view, rather than looking at the basics where most Kenyans need. It's housing, food security, healthcare, and education. Let's invest in these sectors before we start looking at how many Kenyans are homeless. Now we can go to the scorecard. Very good. The first question is in terms of friendliness to Mwananchi. How do you rate the Finance Bill 2023? Well, I'd rate the government a D. You know, on a scale of 5, 0 to 5. 1 to 5. Yeah. In a scale of 1 to 5, I'll also go with a 2. Because in some ways, the government is trying to, remove the ambiguities that existed in the previous finance bills and the income tax acts, and trying to also comply and be in line with what is happening across the East African region and the OECD countries in terms of definition of certain tax heads. So it's 2 for you? It's a 2 for me. It's and in terms of friendliness. In terms of friendliness. Then the other question is in terms of innovativeness. To raise taxes, how do you rate it? I'll rate it a 1. I still feel that the government is going deeper rather than going wider. And even though the government may try to say that they are getting in the digital content creators, there's still a lot of questions on how such tax will be, will be collected from even the digital content creators, including the minors. And the government came on board with, protecting the medium and small industries. And it's like you're getting the turnover tax, 500,000, and you're charging people, the turnover tax and all that. So even though some few people are coming into the tax net, but I think that in terms of innovativeness, the government can do more. So for that, I give them a 1. You give them 1. Yes. So it is 2, then 1. Yes. And finally, in terms of trying to net more taxpayers into the tax bracket, how do you rate the government? I'll go with a 2 again, and yes. Effort is there, and we really need to think out of the box. And it's not an issue of, if you have 100 shillings and I get 20 shillings from you, and I feel that I need more money, I come back to you and I get another 10 shillings. That is not innovativeness. I'm putting a lot of burden on few individuals as opposed to the different avenues that are available for the government to net taxes. Very good. So it's a 2, 1, and 2. And finally, we are here, we are now with you, Prof. Yeah. In terms of friendliness? Friendliness, I'll put 1. 1. So you tie with Salat? Yes. No, Salat gave 2. I gave 1. Oh, you gave 2, yeah? Yeah. So you gave it 1. Why? Simply because I don't think anybody out there will be happy hearing us scoring it nicely, because people are complaining. It's affecting. So are you rating? No, are you rating it based on public sentiment? I'm looking at how it affects the common Mwananchi. How I've told you, when you raise from fuel, from which will go up by 10 shillings to 12 shillings, it will affect people how they go to work. Everything will be affected by fuel, whether it's food, whether you export that LPG gas, so everything. So you're giving it 1? It's 1. Very good. In terms of innovativeness? Innovativeness, I think that the government has not been innovative at all, so I'll go with 2. You go with 2. Were you influenced by Whitney? No, I had made my mind, that's why I didn't want to speak. Okay. Very good. And in terms of trying to bring more taxpayers into the tax bracket? I think this one I'll go higher. I'll give it a 3. 3. And I'll give you an anecdote in the end instead of explanation. There was a madman in his town who used to beg people to be given only 10 euros. And this madman, people used to try him. To give him 20, he refused to take 20. And people used to come again. Somebody tried to give him 100, he refused to take, and just give me 10. So people used to travel from all over the world trying to give him 10 shillings, 50 shillings, $100, I don't know what. He only took 10. So one day a journalist asked him, a journalist like you, my friend, you are here to beg money. Why don't you take 100? And he said, had I taken 100, no one will ever come. Even you would have not come back. So consistency on how you want to collect taxes will make you collect taxes more. Very good. Gentlemen, thank you so very much indeed. So in terms of innovativeness, I think this is where the government has been rated low. In terms of friendliness,
there is a bit of consensus there that more could be done, and of course in terms of trying to bring more people into the tax bracket, the three of you seems to agree that the government scored very highly on this one. Well, now before we wind up, we just want to go to the other side of the studio so that we can get more reactions from the public on our socials. And Marie Yambo, what are the people saying?
Indeed, Brian, just as we've had it here in studio, there's a lot of mixed reaction also online. Whitney saying he's giving the question of the day, which is the 2023-24 budget Mwananchi friendly? She said it's a 0. Well, some mixed reactions in as far as the 15% withholding tax on online content creators. Langat Nicholas is saying, they should also actually pay because we also buy bundles to watch them. So that is what he's saying there. Moshi Kali Dixon is saying, wa hapa naona bora uhai. Just sentiments that life is about to get tougher. Now, Bon Kirwa is saying, if sportsmen and ladies are paying tax, then who are the content creators? In fact, they should pay 30%. So that is his opinion. There is also Montford Kiribwa, ni mzigo mzito haswa kwa walalahoi. And then Wakianda, for the past 2 weeks, all matatus using Old Malindi Road were hiked by 20 to 30 bob. Place here 50, now is 70. Place here 70, now is 100. No one is saying anything. These are just sentiments from our viewers, and thank you so much for taking the time, staying up late, and even sharing your views with us here on Scorecard. We thank you so much for that. So, O'Brien, Kimani, mixed reactions, and just as our panelists have said, the issue probably is not so much about whether taxes are raised or not. What is the incentive for Kenyans to pay taxes? So if I'm going to pay tax, then I also want to see what my tax, because it's an investment. If it's roads, if it's hospitals, whatever type of infrastructure or facilities that the public are supposed to use. So then the government also needs to ensure that that is actually availed to Kenyans. And I'm sure probably when there's value for money, people will probably give themselves to paying taxes. So thank you so much back at home for tuning in. We hope to see you again next time. I hand you over to O'Brien.
Very good, Marie. And of course the question has always been, the problem is not that the government collects our taxes. The question has always been, why is it collecting our taxes? Are we getting value for the taxes that we pay? If we drive on our roads, are they well tarmacked? Do we have security? Are our hospitals well equipped with the competent capacity as well as the right drugs? Well, for sure this is the only channel where you can have this kind of conversations. It's the Scorecard. We do this every Tuesday from 10 p.m. all the way up to 11:30 now. Time is almost coming to 11:30. My name is O'Brien Kimani on behalf of Alfredo Gola, Professor Mohammed Salat and Whitney Misheni. Thank you very much for keeping us company till this time of the night. We'll see you again on Tuesday with a brand new topic. Be ready and get ready to participate. Otherwise, have yourself a good night. Bye for now.
Kwa majina naitwa Francis